the four of you for being here. And as we were saying, I have questions for each one of you, but I would like to intervene whenever you need to. Please intervene whenever you want to intervene. I was saying, Jamila, that we have questions for each one of the specific projects, but I would like you to intervene whenever you feel like. So it's going to be an active discussion. So we have seen that each one of your projects are from very local realities, and in the rural environment it is something that gives us some food for thought. But please, could you explain me, from these local realities, can we replicate these universal solutions? Alejandro, for example, you were the last one. Yeah.
Puedes responder en castellano sin problema.
Ok, perfecto. Pues la respuesta.
So the answer is in this panel. Personally, I am passionate about collecting fog and water from fog and creating greenhouses. And these would help us a lot to bring your technology back in Mexico, and also to use different wild plants that are forgotten and integrate them in our food systems to make it more sustainable. So I think this is the way how we can integrate the efforts that we are doing in isolated regions, and to leverage these technologies that we are all developing. But in your cricket project, can you imagine to grow crickets in another regions around the world where they have problems in getting protein from other sources? Well, making these production systems more accessible, we can install farms anywhere. And when the community produces their own food, they are more prone to accept consuming new products and these nutritious products. And it's better to create these systems in your own community. So the first question I was asking, with these local realities, we can achieve universal solutions, can we? Yes, we always think that the challenges in front of us in different parts of the world are common, are shared. Globalization is a global phenomenon. Nobody can escape from it. And the solutions have to come from the local sphere. And we are not going to this guy in Senegal or in Mexico or in Germany how to use plants. And the local communities will be able to see some examples that they can replicate in their own realities. It is important because if someone is enrooted in, has a transforming impact and honest, right, not being capitalistic, and it has to be born from the local communities. And although challenges are common, and this is why we value these non-profit initiatives. People working in Eixarcolant, they have their salary because you cannot live out of air. But we have also volunteers and the board in the project. And the goal is not to get rich, is to work on something with a goal in mind. And here, the order of the factors has an importance.
Thank you. I'm looking at this from a sort of, Sorry about that. I'd like to look at it a little bit in a historical continuity. I mean, the situation, I was walking with this morning with a friend, and we were just talking about how we find the same store here and there and there and everywhere we go, and this uniformization, homogenization of what we're doing is something that's very recent. It's not that old. I mean, we used to eat crickets. We can't eat them now because there is too much pesticides. We still eat fennel every year in Ramadan. And this idea that the local is a sort of trigger to build a larger movement can only be the reality, one. And two, is that as we do this, there is a sort of critique. We have to change the pattern of how we consume to, in fact, resist this homogenization that's coming on from top, and that has mega million tons of capital, and that has a language of seduction through advertising, and then that we find through school programs and so on and so forth. And so for me, this educating the future and rethinking the future, and all of these people here whom somebody said this morning, it's almost like an act of courage to be here on a Saturday morning, is because there is a sense in which you want to change the world, and you need the pathways to do so.
Ayush.
Yeah, I think I agree with all the fellow speakers here, and I see there's a lot of common things, whether it's happening in Morocco, or it's happening in your region, or happening in Spain. And I strongly believe that the real solutions will come from the local communities. For me also, it eventually became working with the farmers there, and a lot of those solutions actually come from them, right? So I see an exchange in all forms. The local communities can work and bring those ideas, and we can spread them to other places. At the same time, I think many of these ideas can be replicated in other geographies. I see that happening very soon, and I think in this audience, a lot of people will be hearing us and helping us to take those ideas to other regions as well.
Es verdad que cada uno de
Is it true that it is true that your projects are somehow complicated? They are complex, but they start from a very simple idea, the 4 projects. So maybe we think that in order to find big solutions, we need to get deeper, or we need to think about very complicated things, when in reality you are showing that they start from something very simple, right? Very simple ideas. Well, when you are starting a project, very often you want to have the best technological innovation in your process or in your product. But to me, when innovation is in your purpose and the impact you want to achieve with your organization, then it's something cross-section. And then you can develop new technologies, reduce the costs, and then you can establish new infrastructures and develop new products. They all in this line to have this powerful goal that you have in front of you. For example, the greenhouse in a box seems like a very simple idea, right? So the farmers receive their greenhouses, and they can assemble it at a very affordable price.
I think that is where we are working now. We are now making very do-it-yourself kind of greenhouses. The project that we are working now, and I see that maybe next year we are able to do that, is greenhouses or solutions which the farmers can develop themselves. We are using local materials. We are using local materials like abandoned wood, or they have some items locally available, so that at the end of the day, for these solutions to scale, and if I want to take the solutions to 100 million farmers, right, it will take I'll grow old and maybe the next generation also will struggle. So I think what we want is solutions which are simple, solutions which the farmers can adapt quickly, they can do it themselves. But I think the whole point is the initial idea, and it starts there. But once you make them really simple, I'm sure these ideas will just spread like fire. I strongly feel so.
For us, the idea of fog is simple. It's biomimetics. It's you look at nature and what it does, and you just imitate it. And there is a whole like ethnographic practices of how human beings have watched nature and really kind of copied nature to do it. Now, the challenge for an organization like ourselves and for all the fog projects around the world, and there are many, from Peru, there are not in Mexico, but in Guatemala, here in Europe, they are in Poland, it's in other parts of Nepal, other parts of the world. The idea is that you stay local. You don't need, you have the resources there, you build for it, you use it, and you recycle it. That's the thing, you close the cycle. But when you have to kind of dig deep and use resources to go into aquifer water that's millions probably of years old, and then you use more, you pollute more because you're using petrol and so on and so forth to get that. Now, this is a different way of doing it. It's an alternative. It certainly is not a large-scale solution, but it is local, it is efficient, and you have to work on making sure that you have a possibility of storing the water.
De hecho,
Actually, Jamila, I wanted to ask you, so in a critical moment of climate change, with a lot of droughts and scarcity of water, your project can be transforming. So can you imagine this project all over the world?
No, it cannot, because you need to have the resource. And I had this map, unfortunately I didn't show it. I had this map where you have a specific type of fog that identifies as mares del I can't remember, mares del Niebla. Mares del fog seas, and it is a specific type, very thick, like the ones you see, and it has to have a certain kind of natural setup between the mountains, the gravitation. It has specific units, specificities. But there are other possibilities. And the thing is, if we're thinking about water as a major resource without which nothing can survive, and facing what's happening right now in the world, where you don't have any, or where you have excess, where you don't have any, we cannot continue using water for massive agriculture, which is the largest loss of water. In a country like Morocco, that's number one, because there is mass management, there is not a critical and wise use of water, and because we're going into large-scale agriculture and choosing products like avocado. Well, in Morocco, avocado, in the Sahara, where there is a large aquifer, we've been planting watermelons. And this year, watermelons were massively returned to Morocco because they were sick. So, and the communities that are living in this environment have no water to drink. So, you know, it is, I always speak about, when we're thinking about the resources, we also need to look at what's hidden, what's unspoken, what we don't talk about, and it is the economic aspect. And so we focus on, there is no more water, let's pump more. Let's do desalination. The water I drink in my town, in Agadir, is desalinated water. What do we do with the Brom? what do we do with the salts that taken out? And that's not part of the story because it's not sexy, it's not interesting, it's not appealing. But we need to go into those conversations that really are ugly, unfortunately.
El agua es un...
So water is a resource to transform these communities, and the same way Marc said that these forgotten plants are a resource and are a tool to achieve other types of transformation. A transformation that comes from the rural environment, as we said, but that would like to transform the urban environment too. Well, we cannot understand the rural transformation without having the urban societies in Catalonia and all over the world. And the population is concentrated on the big cities and they need to feed themselves. And one of the main problems is that in the last 30, 40 years, we have disconnected from the soil, from the land. And people go to the supermarket, they don't even wonder where the food came from, what had to happen so that the macaroni get to my tummy. Also linking with Jamila said, and we don't think that the watermelon we are eating is leaving the local communities in Morocco without water, without their resources. So in the first wall, we have this problem of extractivism of resources. We live a life of luxuries, using and overusing the land and the resources from the global south. And then we have the big problem that we cannot look at the resources that we do have around us. This is why we mention and talk about these forgotten plants that grow in the lawns and in the orchards. So we just have to collect them. Under the tomato plant, the wheat is called verdolaga, and it is eaten in many places around the world. And it has omega-3. You can eat it raw. You can boil it. You can also make a liquor out of this plant that is considered a weed. So we need to change this mindset. So it's not a weed. When I plant onions are very slum, so I have to take out these weeds because otherwise the onions are not going to grow. But then once the onion is already grown, then we can use this wheat. So we have to have a new look to these resources, and this can be truly transforming, because when the urban society understands that this can be food, there will be someone in the village next door that will do a living out of this, because we are using a resource that was considered a weed and that doesn't need a lot of water, for example. We don't have a lot of time, but I just wanted to ask another question to Ayush. We are talking about the future. We've been talking about the future for 2 days and what we can do, what we are doing to make it fairer. So the self-consumption of the communities with whom you work is being boosted with this greenhouse in a box, and because some might say that in the end, in the future, we will go back to this self-consumption, right, and to consume differently. So are you working on this? Are you transforming this?
So I think that the farmers are so small, right, and the first thing they do it this for money. But what I'm happy about is many farmers that we have, we develop them a model where they're producing these fruits and vegetables and crops for selling, but we also make a small family section inside the greenhouse, which is basically the sides and corners of the greenhouse, and we have kind of made a small section inside the greenhouse. And what I'm very happy to share is, especially the women, they want to actually grow healthy food for their families, and take that nutrition food back and feed to their children. So I really feel happy that I think women entrepreneurs, women farmers are someone who are not just thinking about themselves, but also thinking about their families. How are the children getting the right nutrition? So I see this happening, that these farmers are able to actually feed the urban cities, but at the same time, I see these people actually consuming a lot of that food, and the nutrition levels are going up in the families. So happy about that.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias a los cuatro.
Thank you very much. Thanks to the four of you. We are being very strict with time. Do we have time for questions from the audience? Even if we are running a little late, I have a lot of questions. There will be no time for me to ask any more questions, but if there's any question from the audience, please go ahead.
Very nice presentations, and my question goes to Jamila. And I was, so thanks for sharing this with the fog collectors and this one. And I thought about, do you have some experience on maintaining these systems? So are these, after some while, do they get polluted by molds, or is it also an issue if there is like birds sitting there and the water is then kind of polluted as well? So maybe you can share about this one. Thanks.
Thank you. We do have experience in keeping them clean. We wash them once a year before the advent of the fog, and there are a whole system on top of the fog of the cloud fishers so that the birds don't come. And we do lab tests once a year. I wish we could do it more than that, and like twice a year, but it is extremely expensive. We can't afford it. And the water quality is pretty good, but we don't use only fog water, because fog water is pure. It's an amazing water. It's beautiful. It's amazing. But it doesn't have any minerals. And so by law, we're forced to put minerals, so we use underground water. And I didn't present all the details, and our whole system, in fact, has solar pumps, and we mix, and we have a whole year movement between how much we mix from the underground and how much we mix from the fog, and usually we're playing a whole range between 30-70, depending on how much we have stored. We have 100,000 tons. 100,000 tons storage capacity that was built, some by the community, some by us, some by other actors within the states, the representation of Ministry of Agriculture and Water and Forest, and so on and so forth. And I am so serious about the cleanliness of the water, because it's a penal matter if something goes wrong.
Thank you. It's a rock star. It's powerful. It's not. ¿Alguna pregunta más? Vale.
Yes, well, thank you so much for the presentations. Regarding the greenhouse on a box, how are you thinking on democratizing the price to get it more affordable, even for the millions you need to get it for the small hoarders? Is there any type of microcredit or any stuff you've thought about in order to make it more accessible?
Thanks for that question. I think right from 2015, when we started, the whole effort of Kheti's team has been to make it more and more affordable. And one of the ways that we can make it more cheaper and easy for the local communities to do is use local material. I think today we are still using a bit of steel, a bit of mesh, but I think what Kheti is working on now is how can these greenhouses be made locally by people by using some of the local resources. That will help us to cut down the complete logistics cost that was added in the $650, right? Which is a good 10 to 20% of further amount. I also see that as more sustainable, because the more and more we are using such materials, we are basically again indirectly contributing to the climate. So I see that how should we be able to make this more cheaper? A is using local material and making this work in a way that this can be done DIY, where farmers can grow it. And in terms of how this technology can reach millions of farmers across the globe, not just in India, Kheti is super open for any sort of collaboration with entrepreneurs, with people who would like to take this technology elsewhere. Our technology is totally open source. We have not done an IP or anything of that sort, and don't believe in that, because we have made it for small farmers. So we'd be really happy if we could good collaborators to take this to more and more farmers in that way.
Thank you. Una més? No, es que tampoco no lo veo muy bien, ¿eh? No, ¿verdad? ¿No hay más preguntas?
So we're going to leave it here. Thank you very much, the four of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Margalida. Woo! Best audience.